the U.S. and ROK navies conducted exercises. Our goal was to deter provocations of this sort, and you'll remember that Beijing refused to acknowledge that Pyongyang was the culprit. Of course, that until today has made the South Koreans angry. So I'm saying countering proliferation, it's a bigger fish to fry. We should seek every opportunity to build credible ties with those who can influence the North Korean leader. Now, I don't know how we do this. I have friends who've made suggestions, but among them, see, as I mentioned a minute ago, ask Pyongyang for its version of the Cheonan sinking, not expecting the truth, but trying to change the nature of the relations, little by little. It probably fails. As you'll hear me say a couple of times, what's to lose? Our goal is to keep nukes and fissile material out of the hands of the terrorists. Then there was the shelling of the Yeonpyeong Island. Once again, it looks simple and straightforward. Well, it started with a South Korean live fire exercise. Anybody remember that? The North asserts it was fired on and has videotapes that they say prove it. I don't think the tapes really prove it, but there are probably a lot of North Koreans who believe that it does. And 4 hours later, the North bombarded the South Korean island. So once again, a more complicated situation, and maybe an opportunity to talk about it if what you're trying to do is accomplish some other goal and prove that the North Koreans once again did something wrong. As you've heard me say, we've already proven that. We did another exercise, this one off the southwest coast of South Korea, but with the aircraft carrier USS George Washington participating. The reactions by Beijing and Pyongyang were surprisingly muted. For reasons that I think you brought up in Ambassador Hill's office, I think maybe Governor Richardson did have an effect, but somehow or another it did work out that way. And so the DPRK threatened war if the live fire exercise was repeated. Well, it was. And so we all sat with bated breath, and then Pyongyang didn't declare war, but said the exercise was not even worthy of a reaction. And the U.S. government typically downplayed the possible role of Richardson, dismissed it. Maybe there's good reason to do that, but we've also dismissed other times when a similar thing has happened. Maybe we're looking here at the reason for these provocations. This, of course, is the probable next leader, and he may be having to prove himself with his military to prove he's tough and that he'll undertake these things. If after we have had the great leader, the dear leader, we now hear him called the chubby leader, remember, you heard it here first. We're stubbornly holding the moral high ground on this issue, and I wonder to what effect. Our negotiating strategy has led to having Pyongyang build a nuclear arsenal rather than relinquishing its nuclear program. The North Korea of today is highly unlikely to give up that program. We have not, however, exhausted, in my view, our means to bring about transformation of some sort in North Korea. We're stubbornly holding the moral high ground, as I mentioned, in not wanting to reward bad behavior, a line we've used often, in pointing out North Korean perfidy, in judging the provocations as reprehensible and the crimes as criminal. Having proven all this, but knowing Pyongyang's ability or capability to wreak havoc, remember it has the capability to turn Seoul into a sea of fire with buried artillery. How do we deal with it without resorting to forcefully bringing about regime change, an undesirable, maybe even unthinkable option because of the risk of the unintended consequences? I, for a decade, have urged serious consideration of some of the ideas supported by those who have earned nothing but guffaws at the best from the insiders in government. I've advocated innovative approaches such as establishing a liaison office in Pyongyang, working to establish credibility with those who may have the ear of a dear leader or a 28-year-old new leader, ringing out every overture from Pyongyang, every little bit of potential for progress, listening hard to both the Chinese and the North Koreans to understand, to be better able to negotiate and anticipate, not so we can explain why nothing has any chance of working, but rather seeking any glimmer of something that will work. So here I'm making the argument that what I want is something that will work. I don't want to hear any more of nothing that nothing will work. And a good friend of mine, now from the Institute for Foreign Policy Analysis, now in OSD at the Pentagon, gave me the perfect example. He wrote this op-ed piece and said, the North Koreans have made this overture, but such conditions hardly merit discussions. The word's in yellow. So what he did was, rather than putting a foot in the door, he slammed the door. And that's what I say we're doing with so much of North Korean overtures. Yes, it requires some hard swallowing, but maybe we should be looking at this a different way. Well, I kind of like my cute title here, by holding the line, do we end up holding the bag? If we don't want to talk to the North Koreans about anything except denuclearization, then we're almost certain to go nowhere. Can't we find some way to cleverly talk about something that will satisfy our requirements and allow us to work toward our goal of preventing proliferation? Is the goal to prove that Pyongyang is perfidious, or is our goal to explore all paths that reduce or eliminate the dangers of North Korea as a nuclear weapon state or proliferator? If so, how do we move forward toward transforming North Korea and our relationship with Pyongyang?